Solomon, dude, you have to calm down. It's getting a little bit crazy. Hey guys, y'all been watching. I love it. I absolutely love it. Watch more of them. Watch them again. Watch them 3 times. That's like the amount of watch that y'all need to be watching. But you also need to be subscribing. You only have to do that 1 time. Just go down there, click the button, put the bell on it, be the first to see it, be the first to comment. Make sure that you're commenting. Be sure to tell me if I messed something up. You know, you can be like my 3rd grade teacher. So we start with Sunja waking up on the boat to Isak telling her we've arrived. Everything is so big, like the building she's in looks like Union Station. She sees everyone staring at her and everyone is dressed so Western and she still has more of a traditional Korean outfit on. That's when Isak's brother walks up and he's incredibly happy to see Isak, gives him a big hug, but then whenever he looks at Sunja, he's like, oh, she's much farther along than I thought she was. No matter, let's go ahead and let's head home. Isak offers to take Sunja's bag at the station and she says no, and I think there's 2 reasons for this. One, she's already starting to try to minimize her level of burden to Isak and his family. She says, no, I'll carry it, even though she's exhausted. And the other reason would be that everything that she owns in the world is in those bags that she's holding, in those parcels. Could you imagine being in a strange place and putting everything that you own in the entire world in someone else's hands that you truthfully don't really know that well? Sunja sees a car for the first time, she sees a trolley for the first time, and she hops on the public transportation and they just start riding it back to their neighborhood. She would probably be really impressed and amazed if she wasn't so exhausted. For a pregnant woman to have to make this journey and to go through all of the stress and all of the hardships that she's going through, it seems like it's pretty rough. She looks out the window and she sees a tall man looking at a suit, and she obviously can't help but think of Hansu. Hansu is a bad person, but that doesn't mean that she didn't fall in love with him. Flashing forward to 1989, Sunja and her son are walking through a fish market in Busan, and she is just overjoyed. All of the smells and all of the sounds and everything are almost exactly the same, except that now there's concrete and it's not on a wooden dock, and she's so amazed that she almost gets hit by a moped. Back in 1931 Osaka, the brother says that it's much better to speak Japanese in public, which is going to be a problem. Sunja doesn't speak Japanese at this time, so that's something that she's going to have to learn very quickly. This is not a perfect place and it's not going to be very good for them. Back in 1989 Busan, older Sunja is telling her son how she used to dive down and find bigger sea crustaceans called abalones, and she's just so in love with the sights and the smells and is bringing back all of these memories. But you also get an insight into who she is, that she doesn't believe anything could be free. Only rich people believe that things can be just built into the cost and something. Everything costs extra. Contrasting back to 1931, 1932 Osaka, Sunja's in a new place and she's scared. Whenever she gets home, she meets Kyung-hee for the first time. She steps out of the bathroom, tall, beautiful. She seems to be acclimated more to Japanese culture in this Western type dress. She's made a beautiful traditional dinner and she can't be more nice. She is just so accommodating and nice to Sunja, who looks exhausted and terrified. Whenever they sit down, she pulls out a bowl of freshly steamed white rice from Korea, just like her mother had made her probably just a few nights ago. Sunja breaks into tears. Flashing forward to 1989, Solomon walks into a fancy bar to meet his Japanese friend. He introduces him to his new fiance and they talk about Hana. Hana is kind of like his sister, but also kind of like a love interest. It's his father's girlfriend's daughter. They grew up together. There's a very interesting relationship there that has not yet to be explained. He says that Hana you'll be able to find her basically in the red light district. And his friend basically explains to him that he's being blackballed in all of Japan and that it's not looking good. Solomon turns around to take a drink, and just then he looks over and Naomi walks in looking like a 1989 smoke show. We're gonna flash back to Osaka in the 1930s. Isak's brother has a lot of questions about Sunja, trying to make it known that he's a little bit displeased. That's whenever Isak rolls over and says he doesn't care what the brother says. He doesn't want it to feel like she is indebted to him and she needs to be grateful for everything. He just wants it to be even and for them to be able to start this new life together. This really touches Sunja, and they have their first tender moment and they kiss and they eventually make love for the first time. It seems like a sort of love is slowly blossoming between Isak and Sunja. In the 80s, Solomon and Naomi are sitting on the roof. She mentions that she saw him dancing that day in the rain. He says that after it was over, he just felt weightless. He just felt like he could do anything, that he could just fly away. And they make a joke that, yeah, gravity won. Naomi kind of casually says, well, maybe the old woman wanted to teach you some humility. And this is when Solomon does his Solomon thing and he kind of pops off. He basically just lashes out at her, and she gracefully just stands up with all the dignity in the world and says, I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you, Solomon. Back in the 1930s in Osaka, Sunja wakes up and just springs out of bed. Kyung-yi is so nice about everything. She's like, listen, the baby needs sleep too. Don't worry about it. She turns around and Sunja's now crying and holding this piece of clothing that's being washed. She says that you washed it and it doesn't smell like home anymore. She says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It just started to smell bad. Sunja admits that she just needed a little bit longer and that she's acting a little crazy, but she wants this pain of missing home to go away. And she asks Kyung-yi, when will it go away? And she says, it's probably never gonna go away. It hasn't gone away from me. I don't think it's gone away from my husband. We just live with it. And that's when you flash forward to older Sunja spreading Kyung-yi's ashes out over the ocean on a boat, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's another one of these incredibly edited scenes. They go to pay their respects to Sunja's father, who she still remembers where he was buried, but now it's a parking lot. You flash back and Sunja and Kyung-yi are now being shaken down at their door. They say that Yusuf, the husband, owes 140 yen. The contract says if he can't pay it, the family's got to pay it. Sunja, being who she is, says, how much is it? And they go, now with interest, it's doubled. She goes, you'll get all of your money. Just give us a few hours. We'll bring it to wherever we have to bring it to. You'll get all of your money. Okay, flashing back to the 80s, and Sunja and her son are trying to figure out where they reburied Sunja's father. He was such a sweet man. Let's hope that this was done correctly, you know what I mean? The lady just hands them form. Sunja is upset and she is kind of storming out, and she's like, they can barely find living people in this country. Better yet, figure out where they moved a dead person. And that's whenever the woman runs out and goes, there's a note, there's a name. And they say the name and Sunja goes, oh my gosh. That's whenever you move back over to Japan and Solomon is gonna start looking for Hana. He asks a bunch of people and everyone waves him off. It's not even like they look at the picture. They don't want to be involved in this at all. He's asking a clerk in a bodega type place, and as he's walking out, he sees an old friend of his father's. They recognize each other, and older Sunja at that exact moment walks into her friend Boki's and rings her doorbell. They look deep into each other's eyes and she goes, oh my God, it's you, Sunja, and they embrace and they're so happy to see each other. Flashback and you see Sunja handling business in the pawn shop. She's always been good at haggling ever since she was a kid. She says, this watch is worth $300 and I'm not taking any less. Finally, the man gives in and he says, okay, 300. Whenever they're taking the money, that's whenever Kyung-hee finally breaks down and says, I'm just so scared. I'm scared all the time. Before I moved here, I was a completely sheltered little princess. To see you adapting and just taking this so bravely and being so brave and everything, it really is showing me me how weak I am. Sunja walks over and kindly says, I'm scared too. Why don't we be scared together, and together we'll be strong. Flashing forward to older Sunja, she's now sitting down for tea with Byoki, and she basically starts to tell the story of what happened. Sunja's mother just did not want to let the girls go, knowing that there is a big scary world out there, even though she really didn't have the money. Without Sunja, things just started to get harder. There was less joy, but there was also, you know, less of a workforce. The war broke out, it got even harder, and the two girls knew that they couldn't stay, because if they stayed, mother would just eventually go completely broke trying to keep everything afloat. They were offered a good job in a neighboring city called Manchuria, and they left the mother. It's not exactly said, but I think they allude to that there's a lot of loss of innocence in this time during the war, and they're supposed to be working at a factory, but who knows if that's how it all worked out. The story gets darker and darker as it keeps going. After the war, they return, and Sunja's mother's not there anymore. They don't know what happened to her, but they try to, you know, regain that innocence. They try to turn back into the girls that they were before the war. And one of the girls went to where they used to wash their clothes and have fun just chatting and laughing and dreaming like sisters, and she took her own life. This is all hitting Sunja like a ton of bricks. Her friend says that, you know, some people live in dreams, and whenever the world gets hard like it was during that time, she also tells Sunja where her father is buried. Solomon's friend takes him to his side of town and to his home, and it's very much like the home in Parasite. Older Sunja is at her father's grave with her son, and she is feeling very guilty about leaving and what happened to her friends and what happened to her mother. Like, she doesn't know where her mother was buried, if she was ever buried. Someone once told her that in order for someone to take steps forward, other people have to take steps back. Her son says, I don't know about that. That doesn't sound right to me. And she gives him this look like, you're sweet, but you just don't know. Flashing back to Osaka in the 30s, Hyung-hee and young Sunja are just ecstatic. They have the note that says that they paid off the debt, and they just feel on top of the world, and they're running back and they're giggling. When they get back, they see Yosef standing outside the door, and he seems very upset, and Hyung-hee says, are you sure that this was the right move? Solomon is talking to his father's old friend. He says that he gets to really be himself now that he doesn't have the burdens of expectations, basically, and that he's happier now than he was before. Solomon, not really knowing what to do, he seems very nervous, basically takes all the money out of his pocket and then offers it to him and says, hey, take this, you've kind of taught me something. His friend just kind of looks at him with disgust, like, I don't want your money. Do you not get what I just said? I'm not unhappy. I'm fine with what I have. And he says, you know, I actually always felt sorry for you because you were always so burdened by the expectations of your family. And as Solomon's walking around, Solomon sees this building that says for sale on it. And then you flash back to Osaka in the 1930s, and it turns out that Hansu was the person that Yosef owes the money to, and he knew that Sunja would go and sell the watch. And whenever the pawnbroker says, how did you know that? And he says, she married a dreamer, she's gonna have to pay deeply. Then you flash forward to the 80s, and Solomon is calling Tom in his office, and he's like, I have this idea. And Tom says, we don't really want to hear your idea. I'm sorry, believe it or not, I fought for you, but you're fired. He says, no, listen, I have this idea, it's a big idea. And then he gets a call waiting. He says, Tom, please hold on, just a second. And he flips over, and it's Hana, and Hana is going crazy, and she's like, I don't want to die in the darkness. I don't want to die in this darkness. I need you to come get me. I need you to come here now. I need you to come now. And that's whenever the episode ends. Yeah, that was a real good episode. Real good one. Yeah. You know, Solomon is really starting to grow. You're really seeing the holes in his armor. You're seeing that he actually has kind of a hot head, or he makes rash decisions, like whenever he was in the boardroom, whenever Naomi said that he needed humility, he lashes out. Sunja, you're really starting to see the connection. The younger Sunja has only been getting stronger. She was naive and young. That's starting to really go out the window now that she's in Osaka. She's starting to build her own life. She's starting to become her own woman. And whenever you see older Sunja, you see that. You see this woman, she doesn't wait for anyone. She just goes and gets it done. Just like her son is always following her around, Kyung Yi is gonna be following her around because Sunja is a doer. She gets it done, and it's freaking awesome. And you know what? We gotta be like Sunja. Naomi seems to have a soft spot in her heart for Solomon, believe it or not, but Solomon can't get out of his own way on that one. She's very sweet, and she's trying to, you know, get through to him. Maybe she's saying the wrong thing, but also he's kind of a touchy guy, so it's a very tough situation. She's a very strong woman, and she's not gonna like not say what's on her mind either. And it'd be very hypocritical for someone like Solomon to respect those things in someone like his grandmother, and then whenever a potential partner comes along that has those same traits, to be like, nah, that's a really weird thought. Hansu's back. He is in Osaka now. He seems to be a person that doesn't really accept the L, you know what I mean? It's all W's for this dude. So he is controlling the situations from behind the scenes, and he's going to either be watching his son or he's going to be watching her probably for, you know, their entire lives. Okay, everyone, we made it to the end of another episode. This show is absolutely awesome. I mean, I can't even think of really one bad thing about it. Maybe that there's not more of it. Yeah, make sure you're liking and you're subscribing and you're putting the bell on. And you know what? Share this on your Facebook page. Share this on your Twitter. Make sure that you're filling in all of your friends on all of these things. Don't just take my information and just regurgitate it as your own. Just share it with everyone. Come on, it'll be fun.